Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm Dr. Ray, and you're watching the 5 Before 5 show. Having these conversations points out to you in good ways and bad ways that you might be coping.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you're not outside of yourself to look and be the judge of whether or not you're handling it well.
I think that if each one of us look into ourselves and really ask that question,
that will alleviate some of the hostility and animosity between family members who are Muslims and non-Muslims at the time of death and burial.
We have to think outside of the box in serving the Muslim community. Well, today, alhamdulillah, we're in Bensonhurst Park and we're sitting with Sister Ayat Demis. She is a drug and alcohol counselor, and I'm talking to her today specifically about how people who are struggling with drug addiction, drug use and abuse, how that especially affects the families of these individuals. And so thank you so much, Sister, for coming on. Alhamdulillah, it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
So if you can you talk about what some of your everyday experiences are like as an alcohol and drug counselor?
Oh, bismillah. So, every day different. It's like a different day. Some days we have, great days where I feel like, we're making a difference. And then there's days where, you fall back and it's just like, it all depends on the individuals and their work and, what they're willing to put into the treatment that they want. It's exhausting and it's rewarding and it comes with its own benefits, as in dealing with individuals who have substance use issues. Where it's all about them. It's all about them, completely about them. And it gets frustrating at times because sometimes they're ambivalent to their own, lives. Their ambivalence is what holds them back and being apprehensive about treatment. And because one day they can be motivated and then the next day they're like, I don't have a problem. It's okay. Let me be at home. Let me just stay the way that I am. I'm already stuck. There's no way really out of it, but there is a way out of it.
How do you help someone in that situation, right? Like they come in, they're very ambivalent or they're in denial about their abuse problem. What are you doing and saying to try to wake them up?
Well, if they come into treatment, right, and we're dealing with the 5 stages of change. The person is, some people are in denial, some people are ambivalent, some people are ready and ready to go. Again, depends on the individual. If a person is, very not they're not cooperating with anything, or they just, they're there because they're just there. I could talk to them and let them know, hey, these are your options. This is the way your life will turn out. If you decide to get the help that you want, these are the services that are provided to you that I can help facilitate for you. You just have to show up, and showing up is a big part of it. Right. You show up, you do the part.
You're giving the responsibility back to them.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Like you have to take responsibility for your recovery. Right. I want to kind of deviate using that point. Part of us coming here today is to talk about, how to encourage family members to take care of themselves, right? And so if you can, this point about giving the responsibility back to the person, how important is that for family members to do, despite how hard it might be emotionally? Right. I want to save you. I love you. I care about you. And so for a therapist to say to me, you have to give it back to them. It's like, but what if something happened, right? And so can you talk about what that's like?
Well, at some point you need to learn when to let go. And I'm not saying let go of the person, but I let go of that responsibility to say that this is on you. If I don't help this individual, if I don't help this brother, this father, this cousin, this mother, this sister, if I cannot help them, then if something, God forbid, was to happen, then it would partially be my fault. It's a failure on my part. And that's absolutely wrong. And even though it's easier said than done to let go, which we all have to deal with in life, it's more like there are things that you can do, which is like you give them. I wouldn't say an ultimatum, because that's not something that you should always go for, and like say from the beginning, oh, if you don't get clean, you're gonna be kicked out the house. If you don't do this, you're gonna get kicked. No. But at the same time, you need to learn when to walk away, because it's affecting you. And everyone channels their own emotions differently. There are people who channel it in anger and in resentment. There's some people who are, they will be supportive and be accepting of it as soon as they realize that there is a problem, which you don't really find those in the beginning. Finding the accepting family members. Majority of the time they're in denial because of that, and so they ignore the problem until it gets worse and worse and worse, and
then finally, when their backs are against the wall, they make the decision that might have been better to make a lot earlier, because let's say making that decision now, it was the right decision then, it might not be the right decision now. Is that sometimes the case?
Yes, absolutely. Or they don't know where to go. They don't know who to turn to. Who do I talk to? Nobody. My friend's son doesn't know. Doesn't experience this. Why am I the one getting angry at God? That's a huge part. What did I do to deserve this? And I get a lot of cases where I have mothers come and talk to me, and they tell me, come talk to my son. He does this. Please. He's been doing this for years. And her son is in his late 20s, early 30s, or even, older than that. And it's just like, I cannot talk to your son to change his mind. That's not how it kind of works. Like, I have to explain to them, and like and I feel like with our generation, we have to educate our elders, being that they don't understand what we're coming from, the environment that we're in, and the how easily accessible everything is. That's the my big point to take away from this is learning your people, places, and things, educating everyone, and learning how to deal with triggers. And you as a family member, you should be supportive always, no matter how much you don't want this person to be a part of your life, because of something that they've done or because of this addiction that they have. Because it's not something easy to accept, but it's something you do have to accept, so that way you take the next steps forward to helping them.
And so, when you talk about education, right, that reminds me of the idea that, as therapists, right, we have to do a better job going into the communities that we're a part of. We can't just, you can only see who you can see, right? If you work 10 hours a week, you can only see 8 or 9 people, right? But if you go to the masjid and talk to the people at the masjid, the board, the imam, the community, everyone, you're talking to hundreds of people. And you can educate them instead of one at a time, and then the people become more informed. Because the other point that you made about, how easily accessible drugs are. I try to tell a lot of foreign-born Muslim parents, in your country, when you were growing up, you had the community that was policing you better. You had your friends that were policing you better. And you also didn't have access to haram the way that we do. So when your parents say that's haram, stay away from it. It's easier for you to accomplish, in 1970, right? In Beirut, than it is here in Brooklyn in 2018. You say to your child, stay away from drugs, and then they walk out the door. It's right in front of them, so you got to give them more tools than that. Socially, tools for peer pressure and social pressure, and emotional tools that they don't.
Prevention planning.
Yeah. And who knows that, right? Forget a Muslim parent, but even the non-Muslims who drinking and all of that stuff is part of their everyday lives, you know what I mean?
And it all starts out with curiosity. It starts out with curiosity. It starts off from when they're young. It starts off at, as teenagers, your friends mold you. Your parents are one thing, but you're spending majority of your days in school.
Yes.
and you fall into the wrong hands of people or whatever, and then that's what happens. This person starts smoking weed, and then weed becomes this, and then that, everything escalates. And statistically speaking, 18-year-olds are now the set age for when addiction starts here in America. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. You're a full-blown addict by the time you're 24. That's it's like your life is already set up for you to fail. When are you going to take it back? Let's not make these children part of the statistics. So let's help them from when they're young. And again, raising awareness. Like, I have a very big thing in the Muslim community where it's like, why do we have to wait for an overdose to happen, and then we talk about it for 2 days, and we talk about it for 2 days, and then we're like, we need to do this, we need to do that. A week passes by, and everyone forgets about this person. Everyone forgets about the plan that we've made, and then nobody is like, okay, so I have a problem. Where do I go? Who do I talk to about this? And it's like, one of the great things is that I know that the Muslim Youth Center is a great example. They started doing, and they started doing these groups, NA groups at night, and they're very welcoming. And it's like, subhanAllah, like, the community is coming together, but we just need to be a little bit more proactive. Not just in this community, in all of our Muslim communities. This is more of an Arab-focused community, but there are a bunch of Desi communities, a bunch of African-American communities, a bunch of Hispanic communities that need that work too. All of us
are struggling. Though we might be from different cultures, we all fundamentally. I was talking to a brother actually at the Mass Youth Center last night, and he's Turkish. And I had said to him, listen, we should talk. I don't know much about what's going on in the Turkish community. And, I said we should do an episode together, and, if there's issues of need, we should talk about them so that everyone's represented on the show. And the first thing he said to me was addiction. He said addiction is the issue that we're facing in the Turkish community, according to his experience. And what's funny is that was last night. The night before, I was in another masjid in Central Jersey talking to a friend of mine. And we were talking about addiction. And he said, yes, I have a Turkish friend, and I think he lost his son to addiction. He didn't say, but, and so it's all of us, whether we know it or not, whether we're communicating with each other across our groups or not, it's real, and it's such a serious issue. Can you talk a little bit about, how addiction and drug abuse affects the family emotionally?
It affects the family emotionally. Wow. So it definitely does affect the family. I feel like different families handle it differently. So what I'm saying is, like, one family will be able to learn how to cope with it and will want to learn how to address the situation. So a majority of the families, though, are in denial of a problem, and they put that to the side and they cover up for that. So they'll be like, so why doesn't so and so come to the family barbecue? Why didn't he come to the wedding? Or why didn't she show up for this? Like, is everything okay? I haven't seen her. I haven't seen him. I'm like, yeah, they're just at home. They're just hanging out. They're doing their own thing. They'll lie. And little do they know that this family member is going through hell.
Could be in the streets at that very moment.
Absolutely. And there's some people who channel it, and like I said, they channel it into anger and resentment. So they would want to completely cut out the person, and they would give them the ultimatum is, if you don't do this, then this is the consequence for it, and I'm not gonna talk to you. Or you have the ones who start to emotionally take that in, and depression becomes a very big problem. Anxiety. You start to have that paranoia of, like, every single time they leave the house, are they coming back alive? It only takes one bag of dope to ruin you. Every time we're in an opioid epidemic, so it's just like you think about it every time that somebody does, a bag of heroin or whatever it is that their drug of choice, you're kind of playing Russian roulette with your life. That's exactly.
You don't know it. In your mind in that moment.
Absolutely.
And can you talk about the powerlessness that you might feel? That I'm just imagining the same situation. Now I feel so powerless to stop this person, and powerless over if they're playing Russian roulette. That's like me watching from a 40-story window down there. They've got the gun in their hands.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's probably the worst feeling of life.
Yeah.
Is seeing your loved one slowly hitting rock bottom.
Yeah.
And you feel like you can't do anything.
Yeah.
And feeling helpless and like, because when you start feeling helpless, you're running out of options yourself.
Yep.
And it takes its toll on you.
Yep.
You know, you need to learn how to deal with them, putting self-care, because that's where self-care is. Like, you're so used to putting everybody before you, and then now you have this individual in your life that they literally are absorbing your every ounce of energy 100% of the time.
You forget yourself.
You forget yourself. You forget to eat. You forget to, do like regular things like taking a shower, and it's just it's hard, and it's an adjustment that nobody would like to make in their life, because it's not something that nobody thinks about.
How do families respond then when you talk to them about self-care? When you're reminding them, don't forget to take care of you. Do they receive it well? Do they say, no, this is so important?
A lot of times, people get very emotional.
Yeah.
When you start telling them, okay, so what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
You can't help but cry, because how am I going to sit here and they start feeling this is a selfish thing now. How is I'll give you an example. How is a mother supposed to feel like I'm gonna go and like get my nails done? They think, and self-care to some people is like getting your nails, getting your hair done, or going for doing stuff like that, having a spa day. It's like, it's not about that. It's about making sure that your mental health is at a stable place where you feel like you can function well in your life.
Yeah.
And it can be something as simple as going out for a walk, going out for a cup of coffee, or talking to a friend, or going out for dinner. Sometimes, like, you need to remember that you are a human as well, and you do deserve to live a happy life. I'm not saying at that moment that you should completely block out everything bad that's happening and focus on yourself, but trying to find a place for yourself in that whole busy time where you're constantly thinking about this individual.
You need an emotional break.
You do need an emotional break, and it's hard to give yourself that. How could you give yourself that?
Yeah. When this is so urgent.
Absolutely. So another way of self-care is joining support groups. Okay. Al-Anon and Alateen are two social groups that help people that are, specifically for family members or loved ones who have, a family member in recovery or who is addicted. So it's a place where you can go. They're specifically focused for family members or loved ones of people who are addicts or in recovery, where they can go and share their stories and see that they're not alone. Yeah. Because you're not alone. There are many people out in the world that are dealing with the same thing as you, and who can help you and give you that support that you need that others might not give you. Your friend might not be able to give it to you. Your sister might not be able to give it to you.
They don't know how.
Because they don't know how.
That's an important point. I just wanted to stop you. I don't mean to interrupt, but sometimes we make the wrong conclusions about our family not being able to help us.
That's true. Families sometimes, they don't know how to help us. And for instance, you don't know how to talk to them about what's going on because they're not getting it. They're not receptive to what's going on. Or again, we'll go back to how this person is dealing with this situation. Yeah. I cannot go to an angry father who has resentment and is in denial about his child having a problem, and tell him, okay, well, this is the way that we're going to deal with it, when he's just not having it. He has to learn how to accept it first for him to, come and show up to these support groups or even end up talking to somebody. First step is acceptance.
Even for the people who are family, we say the first step is acceptance for the people in recovery, but actually
for everyone. For everyone. Right. Acceptance is the first step to anything, because as long as you acknowledge that there is something that needs to be addressed, how else are you going to take the steps forward?
Right? It's like sitting in your house and it's burning down and you won't admit that it's on fire, right? The house is going to burn down whether you admit it or not, right? And so, this leads me to another point that you had mentioned earlier, right? You had said that some families are in denial, right? But though they are in denial, I just want to make the point that it doesn't mean you're not suffering. You're just in denial while you're suffering.
Absolutely.
right?
You're just suffering in silence,
Yep.
which isn't any easier.
You know, so one topic that I want you, inshallah, to touch on that maybe goes in two different directions is the idea of bringing Islam into recovery. And so can you talk about how faith helps both the person in recovery and the people who are family members affected by it, you know, because I imagine their faith sometimes gets shaken too just as much as the person who's struggling with the addiction.
Dealing with the person in recovery and how faith plays a big part of that. A lot of times they feel guilt. How am I supposed to pray to a God who I was using? I just did a bag of dope right now. How am I supposed to make pray Salat al-Dhuhr?
Yeah.
I'm ashamed.
Yeah.
The things that I've done, like as in like, did I have to rob, steal, cheat, and do whatever?
I have to do something sexual.
Yes, that as well. Dealing with that shame and that guilt and remembering that God is all forgiving.
Yeah.
And you have to, again, it goes back to the acceptance, and you have to realize that God is there for you before anybody else is, you know? And if you feel that, you know, spirituality is something that you need, it will definitely help in a sense where you find that higher spirit that you get that strength from, that you seek that strength from, that you ask for guidance. You ask for that strength, you ask for the patience to deal with all of that. And they have that serenity prayer. You can do a Muslim serenity prayer, which we do have.
Yes, exactly. And there are Islamic recovery groups.
Yes.
I know that in New Jersey we have two actually that I'm involved in to some degree, alhamdulillah, and they're very successful. We have a lot of Muslims who are meeting with each other on a regular basis. I think that we also need the family support groups too.
Right.
Hopefully the Muslims will be comfortable being vulnerable with each other. You know what I mean? The people who are using, they already are supporting each other, but the family members who are living in secret, if they can just kind of put that shame down for a minute and then come together.
Because it's not about them. I always say that it's not about you.
Yeah, it's not your shame that this other person is struggling with this issue.
It's not your shame. No, it's not your shame at all. And learning again how to go about that, you have to find that within yourself to seek that support, because it's there. You just need to show up and put yourself out there, because being vulnerable is a very scary thing, because you don't know, who's gonna be receptive to what. Am I gonna be shut down? Am I gonna feel more comfortable to share a little bit more? Which majority of the time you don't really feel shut down, because when you go there and you see people that are going through the same thing as you learn that it's okay. Like I'm fine. Opening up now, and it gets easier with time. It does get easier. And as far as faith goes, a lot of times people lose faith, and a lot of times people actually, their faith gets stronger. Believe it or not, I've seen it firsthand. A mother's prayer, a sister's prayer, a brother's prayer, a father's prayer, and that they are insistent that God will get them through this. Whether the outcome is what they expected or what they don't, they're content with Allah's decree.
Which is hard to get to.
That is very hard.
How do you find that the people who do get there, how do they get there?
These people, I don't even know. It must happen. It must be something within them, or something that they've kind of had since they were younger. They develop exactly. Right? It's something that's already there for them. They know how to handle the situation. But then there are people who suffer, who don't know, who ask why, who start to lose faith, who literally are borderline leaving Islam because God's not answering their prayers. And yes, praying to God is good, but realizing that treatment is there, and knowing that with prayer and with treatment, things will get better.
Allah created treatment.
Allah created treatment. Allah created everything. Yes. And we as Muslims, that's the most important thing. When we say Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel, right?
Yes.
we have to genuinely feel like we are content with whatever is decreed upon us, whether we think something is good or whether we think something is bad. What defines bad and what defines good? What's the hikmah behind all of this? What's the wisdom? You know? So, you know, and it helps mold us as individuals.
But sometimes you need to sit with a person who can walk you through that. It's hard to accomplish that on your own.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's where people would tend to struggle. That I can say that, and then a person sits down and says, let me try to implement what Ayat has said to me. And sometimes you have to realize, like, it's not just like you watch a video on YouTube about how to fix your car and then you hop underneath the hood, right?
No tutorial.
Yes, sometimes you got to sit with the person who's going to hold your hand through that process.
And you have to, it's just, when I say that it's all about you working towards that, whether you are the, you know, the person in recovery or you're or your family member wanting to seek help, whether it's something in the spiritual realm or in the, you know, treatment realm, it's there. You know, and if you end up finding somebody who's Muslim and in the treatment realm, you got a double, like, you know, you got the best of both worlds, alhamdulillah. Faith is something very fragile in this whole concept of addiction and everything. It really is. And learning how to deal with it and how to implement it and how to kind of discuss it and verbalize certain things that might trigger people. Like there are, you know, individuals who I've experienced, like in my professional background, who tell me, why does God do this to me? What is it that, you know, I did to deserve this? Like, I know I'm a horrible person and like I'm not a good Muslim, and you know, and they feel like it's just getting worse and worse for them. But then it's weird because they go back on their words and they say, God is all forgiving and he was always there for me before.
But that's the struggle.
That's the struggle. That's exactly it.
Right?
That's the struggle.
And you know, sometimes it's so important for us to realize that addiction, the recovery process, is this back and forth. It's a whole bunch of contradictions.
Right.
It's the person wanting to get better and then not. The person feeling they have a problem and then not. One brother, he came to me in the masjid once and he said, I need you to talk to my brother. You know, we talked to him. He's been struggling with addiction and, you know, we really want to get him help. And I said, well, does he want help? And they said, yes, I think, you know, I talked to him maybe a few days ago for him to get help. And he said, okay. And I said, well, we have to get him now because tomorrow.
Yes, you don't know what you're going to get tomorrow.
He can wake up and,
Say no.
yep, I don't remember agreeing to that, right?
Absolutely. That happens more than often. And also realizing that relapses, even if a person is in recovery and you see them and they're doing so well and they've been doing well for a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then they relapse.
Yeah.
Does that mean that everything else shatters?
Yes.
No, it doesn't. It means that we had a setback and that we're going to get back to that place.
And this reminds me of something that you had mentioned earlier. You said that a brother had mentioned to you actually in a session that he had remembered Allah on his way to go use, and it prevented him.
Yes.
Right? And so can you elaborate on that a little bit and how even when we make a mistake, we have to get back on and then continue to trust that sometimes we're going to make mistakes and sometimes we're going to make the right decision.
So going back on that story, it's this gentleman, he was telling me that he was on his way to go pick up a bag. And he's in treatment. He was doing well, and he, you know, he was stressed out. Something happened, and his first instinct is, I want to go pick up.
Yeah.
He hits his dealer, all that. Every transaction just needs to be made. I need to just go show up. On his way, he starts thinking, all right, God already pulled me out of 3 overdoses. You know, I got out of the psych ward. You know, my family's there for me right now. I have all this going on. Am I really gonna mess this up because if I was angry from a certain situation? Was it worth it?
Yeah.
He walked right back into his house.
Alhamdulillah.
He walked right back. He left. He stopped where he was at. He walked back.
Yeah.
When he came and he was telling me this, I was like, that's courage. That's courage. That's you saving yourself. That's you helping yourself, you know? And he felt really good about it. And once they get a taste of that feeling good, they want it more.
Yes.
And it's easier for them to resist.
That's the new drug.
Yes.
But it's
And
healthy.
remembering God throughout the day more and more, whether they are practicing or not practicing, but they know that there is a higher power out there that's going to protect them from harm and from self-harm.
Yes.
You know? It helps. It does help. And alhamdulillah that us as Muslims, you know, whether we're able to see it or not, God is everywhere.
Yes.
And we need to keep that in check with ourselves, and that's something on a daily, you know, that we have to think about.
That's right.
Yeah.
The last thing I would like you to touch on, inshallah, is the idea of, from your experience, how important is it for us as not only just the leadership of our Islamic institutions, but as communities, to create more of a conversation, more of a space for us to talk openly about addiction and getting help?
So I would say to start off with definitely talking to, I wouldn't say specifically you need to talk to board members, you need to talk to this certain, everyone needs to be aware.
Everyone.
From the eldest to the youngest, they need to be aware. You need to talk to the older generation to have them, and in their own ethnic language, because they need to understand what's really going on and the nitty gritties of sometimes of what they could do to help, and how they can see the signs, and like what resources are available to them. And then educating the young in high school or even in middle school now, the way things are going, you know, about prevention and prevention planning and all that, and learning to get away from bad environments, and you know how to stop somebody who it might be self-harming in a way. As well as talking in masajid, khutbas, Friday sermons, khatiras within, in the, you know, they have them in between Maghrib and Isha.
Yep.
You know, your lecture here and there. You know, you have an event, a mental health event or whatever, and you decide to bring up substance use as something because it's something that should be talked about. And you never know what audience you have. You don't know if a person in there is in recovery, or if they're not in recovery, if they have a family member in recovery, or even if they don't know about it.
Yep.
This is something to raise awareness. We're in the 21st century. It's about time that everyone knows what's going on, and the way that, you know, the world is going right now. There's no excuse for us to be ignorant to anything.
Yep.
And that the resources are there. And if you want to be a part of this, there's a way for everyone.
Alhamdulillah. Well, Jazakallah khairan, alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you and protect you and continue to guide you in all of your efforts and make you successful and continuing doing the good, not just for the Muslim community, but for all of the people that you're helping. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La